So you've probably heard the name before, Nurgle. It's probably the most memed about 40k or Warhammer character, other than perhaps the Emperor, who's a massive fucking prick. Nurgle, the Lord of Pestilence and Decay, of Death and Plague and Despair and Destruction. He's a swell chap. I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet, and today is Wednesday. That means it's Warhammer Wednesday, my friends, and well, I've made this recently. I don't own any other demons or chaos models. Can I get it to focus? Yeah, I can. If I put it in front of my face, I can get it to focus. This is a Great Unclean One. This is the Great Demon of Nurgle. This is... not my... I don't want to say pride and joy. I still love all my Marines. I still love my, Leviathans and Mephistons and Death Company and all that jazz. And I've got Custodies on the way. And I need to fill out my 2,000 points of Necrons as well, and help, I've got a problem. My wife got me this as a little present because she knew I really wanted one, and no, that's not a secret thing to tell me that I need to wash or stop being so unclean. But anyway, looks like I'm building some form of Chaos army, and it's probably going to be Nurgle themed. Chaos is kind of like the bad guys compared to the Imperium. They are the traitor legions when you come to the Astartes, or just the forces of Chaos, which are an evil group of gods. I say evil, we'll come to more of that in a moment, but there are 4 gods from within the warp who look to fuck about, shall we say, with the corporeal world. The 4 gods of chaos are Slaanesh, Khorne, Tzitz, and Nurgle. Manifestations from within the warp, combinations of the wants and needs and desires and fears of the sentient races of the universe. From within that warp, these gods look to manipulate and affect the corporeal realm, with Nurgle being the manifestation of our fears and interactions with naturally occurring phenomena such as entropy, disease, and death. Nurgle is evidently inspired by, or at least originally loosely based upon, the Mesopotamian god Nergal or Nurgle, I'm not sure on the pronunciation. According to the Ancient History Encyclopedia, they were a Mesopotamian god of death and war, thought by the people of Babylonian civilizations to be the deity responsible for hot summers and scorching suns that would ruin crops and later on bring about starving, famine, and disease. Papa Nurgs, Grandfather Nurgle, the big green nugget, Husfield Grandpapa, or as I like to call him, Plague Bitch. Got a lot of colloquial names on Nurgle. Easily the coolest of the 4 Chaos Gods, with Khorne being the least coolest and Nurgle being the coolest. Honestly, if you're a Khorne fanboy and you tell me in the comment section below that you're into them, well, A, their name is shared with a shitty nu metal band. I do mean shitty nu metal band. And B, well, Khorne is all like blood for the blood god, rah, I'm gonna get angry and all that shit. But let's be real, everyone within 40k's universe is angry and looking for blood in some capacity. It's not a unique gimmick, nor is it that interesting. That said, blood for the blood god is a cool slogan, and I often say it for the blood angels, it's blood for the blood god, but not that one. We're more doing it for Sanguinius, our golden, beautiful, godlike Primarch boy, who's also very dead because of chaos. So absolutely, Nurgle is the coolest of the Chaos Gods, and primarily that's because of some of the rad fucking models you can get. My favourite of which was the one I was eyeing up since re-entering the hobby, which is the Great Unclean One. I'll talk more about the lore of Nurgle shortly, but first let me masturbate into the lens of an open camera over my latest painting project. This is my Great Unclean One that I showed you in my office, and now here's some actual footage of it, that I finished as my primary hobby project this week. Can't speak. My primary hobby project this week, and sparked the beginning of my 4th Warhammer army at this point. I think I've got a problem. That's right, like I said, I've got Blood Angels, Necrons, the beginning of Custodies when the fucking models show up. Come on, GW, print me some fucking minis. And the beginnings of a Nurgle Demon Chaos Death Guard army mess thing. More on that in a moment. I am super fucking hyped about how this guy came out. I took some progress pictures as I went. I dry brushed lighter flesh tones onto the model after basing it white, and then used a contrast paint as a heavy shade over the whole thing. I don't think contrast paints on their own make a very good cohesive model, but they're very good when they're combined with traditional painting methods to get this sort of layered, textured feel. I then used pinks and purples to give that decrepit glow to the wounds, and then from there I highlighted and did details, again undershading some of it and using some contrast paints like Flesh Terror's Red to do the guts, and then over highlight again with some purples and some pinks. I used Null Oils, Angrax, Earthshade, and a bit of Serapin Sepia to shade and discolor parts of the body, and voila, I'm super fucking happy with how it came out. The Nurglings, these little demons that attend the Greater Demon, they fight alongside a lot of the Greater Demons and things like Mortarium. I decided to do them in varied colours to emulate a look akin to Pikmin. They are mischievous little things. My wife quite likes them too, because she likes things like gremlins and shit, I guess, and I wanted them to look comedic. A couple of people have pointed out that how I painted them makes them look like the disease sprites from Dr. Mario, and that makes it even better. As I paint more Nurglings in future, if I have some like Nurgling hordes for part of my demon, part of my army, I plan to keep them this varied and colourful to make them look, well, it accentuates the comedic posing and the silliness of the creature and all that sort of stuff. So I now have a Great Unclean One. How do I go about playing with it? The Great Unclean One is a HQ choice for the demons, the Chaos Demons. Now, some of you who've played Warhammer in the past, or as kids or whatever, might remember that demons and chaos just went hand in hand. The demons of the gods and the people praising the gods could be in the same army. And they still can, because they all have the overarching keyword chaos, which allows them to be in the same army. However, if you mix and match them into a detachment, which you can do because of the overarching keyword, by detachment, you lose some of their special abilities. For example, Death Guard lose their ability to move and shoot heavy weapons no penalty, and a few other bits and bobs as well. So what you want to do is do detachments, separate detachments of each army type. One of Chaos Demons, which have their own codex, this one, and one detachment of Death Guard, which have their codex, this one. Now, in 8th edition, the previous edition that I only played a small amount of, because 9th came out as I was getting back into the hobby, you used to be able to do this sort of souping with barely any downside. In some ways, that actually allowed you to farm CP, command points to use in the game, to use your stratagems, your spells almost, the things that affect units momentarily, like instants and magic. I used to farm them by playing more and more troops in detachments and battalions and shit like that. Nowadays, they've decided that actually, if you want to be able to take multiple units from different armies, you have to pay for them in CP before you start. So in taking a batch of Chaos Demons, for example, with Nurgle and some demons, and then a batch of Death Guard with Mortarion and his shooty plaguey boys, well, that's going to be a negative in terms of CP. I'm going to have a downside. I'm going to have to pay for that ahead of time. So the other option is just to have a full force of demons, which is cool because a full force of demons is also an Age of Sigmar army, because the Chaos Gods are both in the fantasy version of Warhammer called Age of Sigmar and in 40k. So if I did that, I can actually use that army across both games, which is pretty cool. However, the demons in 40k have very little shooting, which means in this current edition as well, where you've got to try and get things off of objectives, having to run at your enemy at all times, or make progress by foot slogging, or I guess in vehicles, not that I don't think Chaos Demons have that sort of thing, it's a bit rough. So having some guns and some vehicles in the Death Guard part will even it out. And also, I really just want a fucking Mortarion model. Like, look at this model. It is fucking awesome. The other cool thing about the Great Unclean One and me picking it up is that it's actually 3 units in one. The default Great Unclean One has a few weapon choices. You've got like flails, swords, and bells that summon demons and all that shit. So that's the base one. And I was going to show you the box at this point in the video and I forgot and left it downstairs, so bear with me 1 second. Oh, fucking hell, I should really prepare myself much better before making these videos. This is the box for the Great Unclean One, as you can see here. On the back of it, you can see we've got the Great Unclean One with a bell, and Rotigus. Rotigus is like a named version of a Great Unclean One. There are many of these throughout the Chaos Realms, the Warp, and the 40k universe, and Rotigus is a different version of that. So you can actually have one of both in your army if you wanted to. You can have multiple Great Unclean Ones, I believe. I'd have to double check that, actually. But you can definitely have one of each. And then on the screen here we can see Scabrithrax the Bloated, which is a 777-point version of a Great Unclean One. This one is a Titanic version, and you're meant to use the Forge World model. Now this model's available for around £50 to £60, and the Forge World variant is available for over 100. I think it's about 131 last time I checked. The Forge World one is cool with the tongue wrapping around the sword and all that shit, but the idea that you're meant to use the Forge World one, that is much dearer. And the Forge World one comes with like no options. It comes with like a few separate parts for the tongue and the blade, but you have no options. Well, like I said, this thing comes with 2 different faces. No, 3 different faces. One one-eyed, one two-eyed, and one with the Rotigus like covered head thing. And it comes with like 2 different back arms and 3 different front arms. And this bell is part of the weapons that I took off the sprue and made into the board thing. The fact that this comes with options the other one doesn't is kind of crazy. I do want one of the Forge World ones, but I don't think I'll ever pay full retail for it. It might be an eBay snipe if I can. But either way, my point is, that thing could be 3 different models. And if you take the 770.1, which is basically the equivalent of a Chaos Knight, or even bigger because it costs more points than most knights do. Then you've got the big part of an army. It's probably not very good at 777 points, putting all your eggs in one basket to have it like wrecked by, I don't know, your opponent's entire army firing into it, for example. It being a 22 wound model means it can't very well hide unless you have some very tall buildings. Yeah, it's not going to be ideal, but it's fucking cool. His name is Scabrithrax the Bloated. Can you imagine this guy just rocking up with 22 wounds and just fucking casting spells and fucking people up? I'm into it. So, anyway, Nurgle. Nurgle is a physical being that doesn't stray from the warp. Instead, it manifests its will into the real world through plague, pox, and demons. The Unclean Ones, like I said, being his personal greater demons, avatars of his will, with names like Roticus and Scabman, which sounds a bit like a rap name if I'm honest, being more powerful and renowned versions of the Unclean Ones. Nurgle first appeared on the cover of Realms of Chaos, a source book for Warhammer Fantasy and 40k combined, because they used to share a lot of background and lore, and like I said, they still share the Chaos Gods. You can play both of these armies in both games. Nurgle is said to be the Chaos God that actually cares about his followers, showing a paternal nature in which he rewards followers with eternal life. There's a lot of talk whether his unique brand of agonizing death is really just not actually inherently evil like the other Chaos Gods very explicitly seem, instead that the entropy and decay are natural parts of the cycle of life, and that needing these to birth and grow new life means that he's not really a villain. But let's be real, that sounds like excuses being made for a popular character. And if he looks anything like his greater demons, he's kind of sexy too, so I'm actually thirsty excuses being made for a horrible mass-murdering disease thing. I mentioned earlier how he gets memed about. Well, there's two key memes. One is that the joke is that anti-vaxxers are just followers of Nurgle trying to spread disease throughout the world, and that's kind of funny. The other one is that COVID is Nurgle's fault, which is a little bit insensitive if I'm honest. Not as keen on that one, but yeah, fuck anti-vaxxers. No, seriously, that's not just like a funny statement. Generally, fuck you if you're anti-vax. Stop watching this video. Fuck off. This paternal instinct that Nurgle has, the fact that he cares for his followers, is why he has these names like Papa Nurgle and Grandfather Nurgle and these colloquial names that are very affectionate towards him. That, and he's grossly grotesque, so giving him a friendly sort of like Santa Claus style persona, it's kind of funny in an ironic way. The Dusk Raiders were a force of Astartes prior to the Horus Heresy, renamed the Death Guard when they took on the Primarch Mortarion during the reunification of man and the search during the Crusades for Primarchs by the Emperor. There's a lot there to unpack that I'm not going to go too into. They eventually followed Horus, basically the guy who turned against the Imperium and the Emperor, and they adopted Nurgle as their Lord and Saviour because they were a hardy bunch of hardy men who didn't give a shit if they were covered in plague and pus and boils and shit. They're now a plague-ridden heretic Astartes carrying pox and disease everywhere they go. The funny thing is I keep getting the words Death Guard and Death Watch mixed up. Death Guard are the Plague Marines and the Nurgle following heretic Astartes, and Death Watch are like the Secret Service Special Forces Marines that take one from each chapter to create their squads and stuff, and they can be a mixture of all different... Yeah, they're not the same thing. They're very, very different. Death Guard were the main adversaries for 8th edition, appearing in Dark Imperium and multiple other like starter sets, and their Primarch, now a demon prince called Mortarion, it's fucking nuts. Like, he just flies around swinging his scythe called Silence around and fucking shit up. His model is cool, and his stats are absurd. He's like a 400 point like killing machine, and I really need one. So if you want to praise Nurgle and the inevitability of death and decay, you can give in to the entropy through two factions, the Chaos Demons and the Death Guard. Now, some Death Guard units are playable in pure Chaos armies, the Chaos Space Marine armies, because, for example, Plague Marines are the troop choice for the Death Guard, but they're an elite for the Chaos Forces. So the Chaos Space Marines kind of mix and match. But the Death Guard are the purer Nurgle following Marines, if you will. And the Chaos, like I said, have their own codex where you can have demons from each of the gods, with the Nurgle-aligned ones being all the fetid toads and Nurglings and gross little fucking things. Or you can soup the two if you're willing to lose some CP, as I said earlier. So how does Nurgle play on the table? Well, Nurgle units tend to be slower than their Chaos contemporaries, but they tend to be more resilient, literally. Not only do they have quite a few wounds and other strategies that help to stop the enemy from hitting them by giving them negatives, but they also have what's called disgustingly resilient. It's what is colloquially known as a feel no pain, where when they've taken a wound, it's got through their armour, they have a roll that can save to say, actually shrug the wound off. They lose some flesh, but they don't give a fuck. They're Plague Marines. They're literally living embodiments of death. So essentially, the Death Guard and the Demons are kind of like, well, the Nurgle ones anyway, are kind of like They're kind of like zombie hordes in many ways. Plod along slowly, but they outlast a lot of other armies on the table. It's cool that mechanically they kind of fit that inevitability, the inexorable tide of death that Nurgle is meant to be the king or god of. But be aware this means they aren't as killy. While Mortarion is an absurd damage output unit from the looks of things, they aren't as good at killing other forces as, say, Khorne are in close combat, but they are tanky and resilient. And ultimately that's pretty good in the new edition of 40k. In 8th edition you want to put units on objectives and stick them there and gain points and win your matches that way. And you get your point at the beginning of your turn. So you move on to the objective, and you pass to your opponent, and your opponent gets an entire turn to try and get you off that objective, normally through shooting, hence why demons struggle a little bit at shooting things off objectives. The resilience of Nurgle based units, and the Death Guard as well, means that they can take a lot of incoming fire and punishment, and thanks to decent hit points and saves, and mainly the disgusting resilient, it means that they don't get killed very easily. So they can sit on objectives and hold them and gain those points and rack them up. They are a board control army, which is where 8th edition is leading towards. And that's not the reason I want to collect them. The main reason was because the models look cool, but that's an added benefit, right? So that's Nurgle. That's the basic, whistle-stop tour of who Nurgle is, and what his forces do, and what they look like on the board, and how they play. And eventually, maybe I'll have some battle reports. Who knows? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, hit the like button, and smash that fucking bell down below. Ring that bell. There's a lot of bells on the Nurgle units, actually. So if you ring that bell, Papa Nurgle will be pleased. And, well, the number of Nurgle, by the way, as well, that's another cool thing, is that there's this motif of 7s. Don't know why, didn't find out, didn't do enough wiki diving or video watching to find that out. But there's a motif. A lot of their auras, instead of being 6 inches, are 7 inches. And I'm approaching 70,000 subscribers, hopefully today, if we get enough subs from this video. So hit that subscribe button, kiss me softly upon my moistened anus. I don't know why I even said that. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with more videos tomorrow and Friday. And next week for Warhammer Wednesday. See you soon. Ta-ta for now.